South Africa is facing one of the most serious political controversies since the birth of its democracy, and at the center of it stands President Cyril Ramaphosa. Once celebrated as a symbol of reform and clean governance, Ramaphosa is now confronting a storm of allegations brought into the public eye by a little-known whistleblower named Cat Matlala. According to his claims, what the public has seen so far may only be a fraction of a much deeper problem involving undeclared money, hidden financial relationships, and the alleged misuse of state power. Cat Matlala is not a politician, activist, or media personality. By his own account, he spent more than a decade working quietly inside government administration. His role allegedly gave him access to internal correspondence, financial routing documents, meeting records, and internal reports that were never intended for public view. What makes his claims particularly explosive is not just what he alleges, but how methodically he says he collected his evidence. Matlala claims that over an extended period, he copied documents, matched bank flows with official declarations, and cross-checked internal records against public disclosures. He has stated that he deliberately avoided going public until he believed the material could withstand legal scrutiny. His intention, he claims, was not political gain, but to expose what he describes as a pattern of misconduct at the highest level of government. At the center of his allegations is the Phala Phala farm scandal, which he argues is far more serious than it initially appeared. In 2020, millions of dollars in cash were reportedly stolen from President Ramaphosa's private game farm. The president stated that the money came from legitimate sales of buffalo to a foreign buyer. However, Matlala alleges that internal records raise troubling questions about that explanation. According to his claims, the money was allegedly stored in physical cash rather than deposited through the banking system. Witness statements referenced in his documents allegedly describe large sums of foreign currency hidden inside furniture. Matlala argues that this detail alone raises red flags under anti-money laundering laws, which require large transactions to be traceable and properly declared. He further alleges that the theft was never formally reported to the police, as required by law. Instead, according to the documents he claims to possess, a private investigation was launched that allegedly involved members of the president's security detail. These individuals, he alleges, acted outside their legal authority by interrogating suspects and recovering money without proper oversight. One of the most serious accusations Matlala raises is that the president may have violated his constitutional obligations by failing to report a serious crime and by allegedly using state resources for a private matter. He claims that internal communications suggest awareness at high levels that proper procedures were being bypassed. Beyond the farm scandal, Matlala's allegations extend into the president's financial disclosures. He claims that records show discrepancies between assets registered in property deeds and what was declared under the Executive Members' Ethics Act. According to him, certain properties and financial interests allegedly appeared in official registries but were missing or delayed in public declarations. He argues that these omissions, if proven, would constitute violations of ethics laws designed to prevent conflicts of interest at the highest level of government. In his view, the issue is not just transparency, but whether the president continued to benefit financially from private interests while holding public office. Another major component of his allegations involves the CR17 campaign that propelled Ramaphosa to leadership of the ANC. Matlala claims that internal fundraising documents reveal donor lists and payment structures that were not fully disclosed to Parliament or the public. He alleges that some donors expected access, influence, or appointments in return for financial support. While no court has ruled that these donations were illegal, Matlala argues that the pattern creates the appearance of quid pro quo relationships. He further claims that some funds were routed through trusts and intermediary entities designed to obscure their origin, making it difficult to determine who was truly financing the campaign. One of the most sensitive allegations he raises is the possibility of indirect foreign influence. According to his claims, some contributions may have originated from entities with foreign interests in South African mining and energy sectors. If true, he argues, this would raise serious legal and constitutional concerns. Matlala also alleges that his documents show a broader pattern of what he describes as regulatory capture. Instead of direct bribery, he claims certain business figures gained privileged access to policy discussions before decisions were publicly announced. According to him, these individuals allegedly benefited from early knowledge of regulatory changes and strategic appointments. He points to appointments in state-owned enterprises and regulatory bodies that he claims align closely with the interests of individuals connected to the president's business network. While he does not allege direct instructions, he argues that the pattern suggests influence operating behind closed doors. Another controversial aspect of his allegations concerns the president's business relationships. Ramaphosa built significant wealth before becoming president, and Matlala claims that some financial ties allegedly continued even after he assumed office. He argues that blind trusts used to manage these interests may not have been fully independent. According to his claims, internal communications suggest ongoing awareness of investment decisions that should have been entirely hands-off. He alleges that some business partners linked to these structures face sanctions or accusations in other countries, raising concerns about reputational and legal risk. Matlala also claims to possess documents related to the Marikana tragedy that were not presented to earlier commissions of inquiry. He alleges that additional correspondence from that period could shed new light on the role played by politically connected individuals. While he does not claim these documents prove direct responsibility, he argues they could justify reopening unresolved questions. Beyond the substance of his allegations, Matlala has also spoken publicly about the personal cost of coming forward. He claims to have experienced intimidation, unexplained surveillance, and suspicious activity affecting his finances. He alleges that there have been attempts to discredit him by framing his actions as theft of government property rather than protected whistleblowing. According to him, this creates a dangerous precedent. If exposing alleged presidential misconduct leads to prosecution or harassment, he argues, future whistleblowers will remain silent, and accountability will collapse. It is important to emphasize that these are allegations, not legal conclusions. President Ramaphosa has denied wrongdoing, and many of these claims remain contested or under investigation. However, Matlala argues that the cumulative weight of the evidence raises fundamental questions about transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. At its core, his case is not about one scandal, but about whether South Africa's constitutional safeguards apply equally to everyone, including the president. He claims that the documents he released were intended to force institutions to act, not to decide guilt in the court of public opinion. Whether his allegations lead to prosecutions, impeachment proceedings, or are ultimately dismissed, they have already changed South Africa's political landscape. They have reopened debates about ethics, power, and the limits of executive authority in a constitutional democracy. The final judgment will rest with Parliament, the courts, and the public. But Cat Matlala's allegations have ensured that these questions can no longer be ignored.